Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Generic Garage. On the last episode, we got the show taken apart. I got the motor, the transmission, the subframe, all that pulled out, and I spent a little bit of time while I was waiting for some stuff to show up, taking apart that subframe, transmission, and engine. I got that all apart. Didn't think anybody would really want to see that on camera, so here is the motor. We got the bad transmission down here, we got the good transmission over here, and then we got the subframe pulled out because that's what we're gonna need to be looking at when we try to fit everything in the back of the Festiva over here. What I was waiting on was material to come in. We got everything here for the roll cage. This is DOM steel. It is 1 3/4 OD by 0.156 wall. It's way above NHRA spec. We also have a piece of 3/16 2x3 rectangular steel tubing. I'll show you where that's going to go in a little bit. We don't need that much of it, but why not? We'll just get a whole stick of it. Brought out all of my metal tools. We have our pipe bender from Rogue Fab. That took a little while to get here. They send these things out in batches to be powder coated, but all of those components are here. We're set up and ready to go for the air hydraulic ram, so that'll be nice. It's not quite their most expensive setup, right around the mid-grade, but I think this is going to work out just fine. I've never bent any tube before, so we're going to be figuring this out together. Speaking of bending tube, we have a basic design done here. I did not like working too much in Fusion, so once I got the basics done in Fusion, I moved everything over to SolidWorks because I'm more familiar with that software. But essentially, this is what we're looking to build. I am going to have to cut out the whole back of this Festiva, and then we're gonna essentially just make this roll cage, and that'll be interesting. That'll be some fun. We can go through this here in a little bit. Other than that, we have a vise up here at my dad's and our tubing notcher. So what we're gonna get started with today is opening up the Festiva, and we're gonna drop the fuel tank. We need to start cutting up the floor in the back, getting all these different brackets and things removed. I'm gonna try to leave the rear axle in it for as long as possible. It makes it mobile. Once I take that axle out, all of a sudden this thing's kind of stuck where it is, and I don't wanna leave it sitting in the way of the lift for too long in case my dad needs it to work on something. But we may end up just having to remove it. So for today, we're gonna get this thing up on the lift. I believe our fuel tank is right here based on the wiring and the plate right here. That's probably access for the fuel pump and the sending unit, if those are indeed together. I think it's just the sending unit. The fuel pump, I believe, is mechanical on the engine that was in this car. But anyways, the idea here is we need to take a piece of that rectangular tubing and we need to weld it from this flat spot over to this flat spot over here. Pretty much all this metal is gonna get cut out of here. We're gonna remove these side brackets that were for the seat. I'm pretty sure the shock towers are coming out. We're gonna end up cutting out a pretty big arch all the way through there. Anything in here has to come out. The roll bar will then connect to that 2x3 piece of rectangular tube, come up, go over, and come down, and then we'll build the rest of the roll cage, frame, assembly, whatever you want to call it, out from that. That's going to be the biggest first step. So here is the roll cage that we are looking to build, and I've redone it in SolidWorks, and I have all of our bends marked, and I know exactly how we're going to bend all this stuff. Applying it practically to the bender is a different story. I'm gonna have to go very carefully and very slow. That metal's about $1,000 worth of metal over there. I'd hate to mess it up and have to reorder it. We only need about 4 of these 10 or so foot sticks, but I have 6 just in case a mistake is made. So we'll have some extra for sure, just in case. We're gonna be doing things just a little bit differently from the way the original Shogun was done. Here is a picture of an original Shogun with the motor pulled out of it. And you can see what I'm talking about on the bar here. It's a 2x3 piece of rectangular steel. And this one might even be a 3x3 or a 2.5 by 2.5. I'm not sure exactly what they used, but that runs all the way across the floor here. And then you'll notice that they actually cut the subframe from the show and welded it straight into that piece of rectangular tubing on both sides. Now, I don't want to do that. I want to keep it such that we can drop the entire subframe out of the vehicle. So what we're probably going to end up having to do is weld this bar a little bit higher up, and then we can make it such that the mounting points of the subframe will bolt up through that rectangular bar on the bottom, so that in the future we can pick the car up and have the whole engine, subframe, and transmission drop out of the rear of the vehicle, just like it did on the Ford Taurus show. So there's a little bit more engineering work to be done there, and I got to take some measurements. The 3D scans helped immensely for the design of the roll cage, but as you can see, I have not implemented that 2x3 piece of tubing. So we're gonna get everything cut out of here as much as we can today, and then take that subframe that's up there and see what we can do with it and where everything needs to line up. Left to right's not so difficult, front to back shouldn't be too bad, but that up and down height is going to be somewhat tedious, and everything needs to be level, of course. So there's a lot of little intricate details that are going to have to go into this, but we'll get it knocked out. So let's go ahead and get started removing all the stuff from the back of the Festiva. Already a little bit of a progress update. We got the fuel tank out and we got the exhaust out. So looking at this, we've got this support bar, beam, whatever you want to call it, that runs from left to right. That has to come out. All this sheet metal up here has to come out. We're going to be cutting pretty much along this bend line here. I'm not too sure about the frame sections that run back here. The cool thing about this axle is that it looks like it's a bolt-on, bolt-off, so if we need to get it out of the way temporarily, we can, and then get it back up under here. I think it's going to be in the way because we need to see how that subframe is going to fit up underneath here, and trying to maneuver that around. I got a feeling that that subframe is going to kind of want to rest right where this rear axle is. But if need be, like I said, we can unbolt it and rebolt it back in once we get everything situated. So I'm going to start taking a grinding wheel and cutting pretty much on the inside of the frame here, cutting this out, cutting all the way up along here and just trying to basically get this all hollowed out. I'm not too sure how or if this frame's gonna wanna try to bend or flex once we get this out of here. My dad had suggested welding in a temporary support, but I think that might just get in the way. Hopefully, if we leave this back section, it's thin metal, but hopefully the frame is thick enough and rigid enough that if we leave this in here all the way across, that'll be enough support to keep this all from flexing. I don't think there's too much weight back here. We're not putting pressure on the vehicle laterally. So hopefully we can just start getting in here with a cutoff wheel, removing some more of like the brake lines and the fuel lines and all that kind of stuff. So we'll drop the car down here in a minute and get going on that. One thing I did forget to mention earlier, and I don't know how accurate his pressure gauge is. It seems a little ridiculous, but maybe this is just a high compression motor. So this is the front of the engine where you got your oil fill here. We popped out all the spark plugs. We labeled all the cylinders. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I believe is the way they do it per the manual, which is something I still need to order. But we ran a compression check on all of the cylinders. So we got anywhere from 245 PSI to it looks about 230. So about a 15 PSI difference, but that could be valves being dirty, rings not being seated all the way, but that's a very high compression motor. I'm not used to really seeing compression that high on something like this. So that's what might make this thing a super high output, is the high compression. But basically what that means is we've got a good motor here with really good compression. So that makes me feel a lot better. And we probably won't need to go digging into this thing beyond new plugs, fixing whatever's going on with the oil leak at the back. Maybe that's a rear main or just an oil pan gasket. But everything else, the fact that the motor turns over and has good compression, leads me to believe that for now we should just be able to get the motor in there and get it fired up the way it sits. So that's fantastic news. Okay, you know what, on second thought, we might change up how we're gonna do this. There's a lot of sparks being thrown around. I think this would be better done with a body saw, and I'm obviously gonna need some drill bits and an air hammer / chisel for breaking all these spot welds. And then looking over at the computer and looking at the original show, yeah, all that needs to come out. That little crossbar in the bottom, and then the shock towers, the bracket for the seat, pretty much all that comes out. So we shouldn't even be trying to cut out the little bit of metal that we're trying to cut out, like right here, because this gets removed off the side here. We got to cut this out all the way around, all the way up to the very edge there. And then that frame that we were talking about that runs back here all the way to the back, that just gets cut out anyways. So I'm gonna kind of stop right here at this point, and we're gonna go over to Harbor Freight. We're gonna pick up a body saw. We're gonna pick up an air hammer / chisel thingy and some drill bits, and then I will come back out tomorrow morning and we will be right back on this project. So let me go knock that out and we'll be right back. And we are back. It's a new day. I went over to Harbor Freight yesterday and picked up some tools. So here's what we're working with. Got a little air hammer, a little body saw, we got a little belt sander. All of this together should help us remove the rest of the stuff from the car. So right back into it. I think I'm gonna go ahead and call it a day for today, and we're gonna say this episode is a wrap. Today is Super Bowl Sunday, and I need to go home, get showered up, and go to a Super Bowl party tonight. Woohoo, go team. I realized we didn't make a whole lot of progress this time, but I mean, at least we got somewhere. We got the gas tank out, we got the floor cut out, and now we can actually see that the subframe does fit in here. Clearly there's still some more that I have to cut out. I need to cut out the fender wells and everything like that. So on the next episode, we'll finish getting all of this cut out. We'll get this kind of situated where it needs to be, and then we'll start working on the rectangular tube that's going to go from this side all the way over to this side, and we might do something like that from here all the way over to here, which will give us some good mounting points for the subframe. And then once those two are situated, we can start work on that roll cage, that main hoop that's going to go up and over. After that, we're going to have to start working on getting everything aligned front to back. I'm pretty sure I have to make these wheel arches a little bit bigger, if not a lot bigger, but then we'll start working on the rest of the roll cage assembly. We can get the other transmission put back on the motor, and then maybe see if we can't pick the car up and set everything down where it needs to go. And that'll be the easy part taken care of. Now that we've got the motor, the transmission, the subframe in the vehicle, everything situated where it needs to be, we'll start buying some parts. We'll start looking for things like CV axles. So on the last video, a guy by the name of Adam Hennessy, I believe, who is an owner of actually one of the original Shoguns, left me a comment and said a couple things about, you know, Ford didn't make them, a different company called Specialty something Inc. It's in the comments on the last video, go check it out. So I ended up finding his page on Facebook, and then I also started scrolling through all of the comments on the Facebook for the number 8 Shogun build. And one of the things that I found on there was one of the actual creators of the Shogun. They had talked about the suspension in the rear end and how they tried to maintain the original geometry from the Ford Taurus show for the shocks and the towers and everything like that. And what they found out was that they had issues driving that car and maintaining stability when cornering. And one of the engineers there said, no, make those shocks straight up and down, just purely vertical. And then that helped solve all the problems that they were having with the suspension in the rear end. So that actually helps a lot. That means that when we go to put the suspension in here, we need to make sure that the shocks and the springs and all that are straight up and down in both this plane and this plane. So now we have something to go off of, and we don't have to waste our time messing with the geometry of the original Ford Taurus show and then finding out later on, hey, that's a bad idea. That really, really helps a lot. And I'm glad people post things like that and people comment on it. I wish I could have a conversation with a couple of the guys who actually built the original 7, because I have some questions, but we'll just kind of figure it out as we go along. So thank you very much to everybody who subscribed. I really appreciate it. The numbers jumped up by quite a bit. If you like what you're watching here and you want to see this Shogun come to life, please consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers this year. Kind of an arbitrary number, but also that's the number that, you know, your channel kind of needs to hit in order to become monetized. The easy part is coming to an end, but the hard part's going to be when we actually start creating the body and all of that. I'm going to try to CAD it up the best I can. And the plan that I have for now is to design it in 3D and then 3D print it in sections, put it together and use it as a mold. That way everything is symmetrical. We don't have to wonder if the left side's the same as the right side. And if something breaks in the future, we have a mold and we can make replacement panels. So there's gonna be a lot of work that actually goes into that behind the scenes that I'm probably just gonna do in my spare time. I mean, unless y'all want, comment down below. If you guys wanna see me working on that on the computer, I guess I could post a video of that. So until next time, y'all have a great week. Stay safe. Enjoy the Super Bowl if you are into that sort of thing, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Y'all take care. Bye.